History is filled with some truly weird stuff, but this might just take the cake. We're about to dive into a time when animals, yep, actual animals, were arrested, put on trial, and sometimes even sentenced to death.
Okay, so let's try a little thought experiment. Imagine your neighbor's dog gets loose and, unfortunately, bites you. It's not great, but you know what to do, right? You know who's at fault. Today, obviously, you'd hold the owner responsible. It's just common sense. But if you were to rewind the clock to the Middle Ages, that common sense goes right out the window. They wouldn't sue the owner. Oh no. They would arrest the dog. They'd put the dog on trial. I'm not kidding. The animal itself would become the defendant. To really get a feel for how wild this was, let's look at a specific case. We're going back to 1386, to a town in France called Falaise. And this case, well, it's probably the most infamous one of all. The defendant was a pig, and the charge? Murder. Now, this all started with something truly awful. A pig actually got into someone's house and attacked a baby in its crib, and the child died. A horrible tragedy. But here's the thing. Instead of just, dealing with the dangerous animal, the townspeople, they wanted a full-blown trial. They demanded formal justice. And this is where the story goes from tragic to just completely off the rails. First, they arrested the pig, put it in a jail cell, just like any human criminal. Then, for its day in court, they dressed it up in human clothes. We're talking a waistcoat, pants, the whole shebang. It stood in front of a judge, had a lawyer, and went through a formal trial. The verdict? Guilty of murder. The sentence was to be publicly hanged. But just when you think it can't get any weirder, it does. The court issued an order. They made all the local farmers bring their other pigs to the town square to watch the execution. You want to know why? The official court record says it was so that other pigs might take it as an example. They were trying to scare the other pigs straight. Absolutely incredible. Okay, so that pig got a lawyer, and that wasn't a one-off thing. Let's jump forward a bit to the 16th century, still in France. There was this real-life lawyer, a guy named Bartholomew Chassenez, who kind of became famous for defending some, let's just say, unconventional clients. Specifically, a massive group of rats. So the local folks were having a huge problem. Rats were everywhere, just devouring their barley crops. And they'd had enough. So what did they do? They took them to court. The entire rat population of the area was formally charged with criminal destruction of property and summoned to appear before a judge. So trial day comes, and big surprise, not a single rat shows up. The judge is all set to find them guilty right then and there, but their lawyer, Chasseneux, he stands up and makes this brilliant argument. He says, "Your Honor, the summons wasn't served correctly. My clients are spread out all over. They couldn't have all gotten the message." And the court buys it. They postpone the trial. So the new court date arrives, and again, no rats. But Chasseneux has another excuse ready. He claims his clients really wanted to come, but they were afraid for their lives because of all the, and I quote, murderous cats along the way. And you won't believe it, the judge agreed. The case was postponed forever. A huge win for the rats. All right, our final case study is maybe the strangest of them all. We're moving away from things like murder and theft into something else entirely, something supernatural. We're in Basel, Switzerland, in 1474, and a rooster does something that absolutely terrifies the entire town. What was this horrifying act? The rooster laid an egg. Yeah, that's it. Now, for us, that's a biological hiccup, a weird thing that can sometimes happen. But for them, this was a sign of pure evil. It was considered an act of Satan. And here's why they were so scared. They had this belief in a creature called the basilisk. It was this mythical monster, a kind of serpent king, that was said to be born from a rooster's egg that was hatched by a toad. And this thing was seriously bad news. Its breath, its gaze, it was all supposedly fatal. So to them, this wasn't just a weird egg. This was the first step in creating a weapon of mass destruction. It was proof of witchcraft. So, of course, the rooster was arrested. It was put on trial for working with the devil. Its defense attorney argued, pretty logically, that laying an egg wasn't a choice. It was involuntary. But that argument didn't fly. The court found the rooster guilty, and both it and its so-called unholy egg were publicly burned at the stake. So, a pig dressed in pants, rats with a lawyer, a rooster burned for witchcraft. It's all completely bonkers. The big question is why? Why would they do any of this? Why go through all the trouble of a trial? Well, the answer really pulls back the curtain on how people in the Middle Ages saw the entire world. You have to remember, their world often felt violent, unpredictable, just chaotic. These trials were, in a way, a desperate attempt to force some kind of human and divine order onto nature. They genuinely believed that all of God's creatures, not just people, were subject to a single moral law. So by putting an animal on trial, they were treating it like a being that had free will and knew right from wrong. The trial wasn't just about punishment. It was a public ceremony, a ritual to put the world back in balance after something terrible had disrupted it. So looking back, it's easy for us to call these trials absurd. And they were. But it does make you think, doesn't it? What about us? What common sense things that we do and believe today will people a few hundred years from now look back on and think, wow, those people were really, really weird?